What's up, everybody? It's Soren Baker here on Unique Access Entertainment. As always, please hit that subscribe button. It's right down there and it's free. Now, today on the 1st and 15th, the last video I did was about some of the greatest cover art that was actually drawn or illustrated and such. And we got a lot of response to that one, so many comments. So thank you, first of all, first and foremost, thank you, because we do read them and I read them or people tell me about them or what have you, but you definitely check them out and definitely appreciate the feedback and the interaction, because that's part of why that we make this stuff here at Unique Access, is that we want to deliver the best rap commentary on the internet, the best videos, the best interviews, the best commentaries. And clearly the cover art resonated with a lot of people. And what I wanted to do today is do a part 2 of that, to one, show you guys that I appreciate your support and the fact that you watch, and also to highlight some of these other great albums that you brought up in these comments, because I think you're right. They are very important. Now, as I mentioned in the part 1, if you haven't seen it, you can definitely check the link there. Please do. But part 1, I basically said that, of course, it didn't include every album cover, and that I'd only really gone up to Snoop Doggy Dogg's Doggy Style, which was 1993. But today, we're going to go some albums before 1993 that I didn't mention, and then we're going to include some albums that came out after 1993 with Doggy Style that are very important, that are great, and deserve the attention. So, first, I want to give a shout out to Chris Dragnet 722. Now, Chris highlighted Def Jef's 1991 album Soul Food. If you guys don't remember this, the cover is really a reimagining of the Last Supper painting as depicted by Leonardo da Vinci. So right there, that's a bold move. I thought was incredible. I remember getting this album and thinking that was ingenious, and even seeing the ads in the rap magazines. Incredible stuff. And then when you look, you might recognize, in addition to Def Jef, just to pull with Soul himself, you will also see like the Isaac Hayes, Bob Marley, and James Brown among some of the other people that are depicted. So the Soul Food definitely caught my eye, and I was definitely appreciative of that one when it dropped. And Chris Dragnet 722 also mentioned 3 Times Dope's Live from McNicholas Land. And if you didn't see it already, Chuck Nice from 3 Times Dope and I did a cover story. There's the link to that one. Definitely check it out. It's a lot of insight, a lot of great stuff, things I'd always wondered about that cover. Chuck Nice was nice enough to break it down. So right there, these type of comments from Chris Dragnet 722 are part of the reason why Unique Access is so fun for me. Seeing these comments, seeing the interaction, and seeing the passion, and talking about some of these albums that I love clearly as much as you guys do. So that's a beautiful thing. Next one that I wanted to highlight comes from Greg Popovich, and this is from De La Soul. It's 1991 album, De La Soul is Dead. For those that remember, this is a picture essentially of a potted daisy plant that is wilted or wilting, and that was to symbolize the end of the daisy age, the end of the daisy era that De La Soul had helped popularize on his debut album, 3 Feet High and Rising. But the group famously did not like or appreciate or feel that the hippie daisy age vibe really reflected them, even though it is the inner sound, y'all. But I still thought it was an amazing album cover. More importantly, I think De La Soul's Dead is De La Soul's best album. I think it just has so much phenomenal material on there, social commentary, wordplay, the esoteric type of nature De La Soul introduced on 3 Feet High Rising remains. But you got Millie Pulled a Pistol on Santa, you got Biddies in the BK Lounge, among many other great songs. Oodles and O's another one. And Von P and I, we did a best albums on that. So there's the link there. If you haven't seen it, you can definitely check that out. We go deep and talk about many songs. So another album and album artwork that I wanted to highlight came from Demore Remda. Pardon me if I'm saying that wrong, but that was the user ID. And they put Boogie Down Productions Sex and Violence, which, yes, I think that was a wild album cover. It came out in 1992, and it was very surprising because KRS-One and Boogie Down Productions typically had rather straightforward photos, and this one being an illustration, or I assume an illustration, maybe a painting, but illustration, was very graphic. It had the politician, seemingly a politician with a stripper or exotic dancer or woman of the night on his lap, and then all kinds of other chaotic stuff going on. But the 1992 album really reflected this cover because you had Duck Down, you had Drug Dealer, very political song on there, like a Throttle. Freddie Fox shines throughout the album on multiple songs. 13 and Good, dealing with underage sex and abuse, sexual abuse, which is obviously relevant and powerful and timely. And then, of course, We In There, which was one of the singles and one of the other big songs from Sex and Violence from Boogie Down Productions. Also, in 1992, we got Bushwick Bill's Little Big Man, which was an interesting depiction of Bushwick Bill. This one was shouted out by Demode H, or Demode, and shout out for that one. But Bushwick Bill, you know, coming up through the Ghetto Boys, at that point he had already had his eyes shot out, and they did that on the We Can't Be Stopped cover, but that's just a picture. Little Big Man had Bushwick depicted in an illustration, and he looks like rather scary, to put it mildly, on that one, which I thought was good and intriguing because Bushwick Bill was a larger than life character, and that's, you know, not a play on words. He literally was. I had the pleasure of meeting him a couple times, and he was a very interesting cat. Now, KB Play shouted out one of my favorite albums, man, Pharcyde's Bizarre Ride to the Far Side, also from 1992. This one has a wild drawing, and they're taking a roller coaster into what appears to be something you guys need to watch for yourself. And in fact, I talked with Fat Lip about this on Cover Story. Fat Lip and I, there's the link if you haven't checked it out already. Great discussion with Fat Lip, and that one was a sight to behold because I'd always wanted to ask them about the art, the picture itself, but then also the meaning, why they chose it, etc. And you get a lot of that in there. So definitely check that out. Longtime watcher, supporter, subscriber, Tone West 211. He said that we needed to mention Above the Law's Uncle Sam's Curse. For those that have watched Unique Access over the years, definitely know I'm a huge Above the Law fan. I'm friends with Cole 187 and have interviewed him multiple times on the channel. But for this particular thing, you should definitely check the cover story Cole 187 and I did on Uncle Sam's Curse. There's the link for it right there, because to me, this is one of the best and most powerful album covers in rap history, with the social political dynamics that are depicted on there. And then also it ties masterfully into the stuff that Above the Law, specifically Cold 187 and KMG were talking about throughout Uncle Sam's Curse, which I think may be their best album. It's hard to say because Above the Law's catalog is stupendous, but Uncle Sam's Curse is definitely one of the better projects, period. Go fast forward a year later, we got this one from the Lamar Star, and this was The Genius Liquid Swords. So this came out in 1995, and this was released, you know, in a masterful run that the Wu-Tang was having from 1993, 1994, and then in 1995, where you had the Genius album, Liquid Swords, you had Old Dirty Bastards Return to the 36 Chambers, and you had Raekwon, of course, Only Built for Cuban Links, all in the same year. Magnificent run that the Wu had, but the Genius's Liquid Swords was pretty remarkable because it blended the whole imagery that the Wu had been establishing since 1993 is depicted in artwork there on Liquid Swords. I thought that was amazing. And also, you know, a lot of these albums are West Coast and East Coast artists, but Florida Georgia made a point to highlight the So Def Bass All-Stars in the 1996 compilation, which most famously is known for My Boo by the Ghost Town DJs. And that was a big song in 96 for those that know and remember. Huge. Speaking of huge, in 1996, Don Juan Seville shouted out Makaveli, the Don Illuminati album, of course, from Tupac under his alias. And this album, like Def Jef with the Soul Food, had a religious depiction of what we assume to be Tupac on the cross, like Jesus. And that was a very powerful and striking image, especially when put up against the fact that he had just been killed that year in 1996. And right after that, boom, we get a picture of him depicted on a cross. after being executed. So that was striking timing. And then when you get to the album Bomb First, My Second Reply, you got Toss 'Em Up, you got Hail Mary, just an amazing album and something that I thought tied in well to not only the album cover, but how Tupac had been persecuted in the media, by rappers, by people in the music industry. So it really tied in well to that album cover. Another one is Zuck 100. Shouted out, in my opinion, what is the best rap group of all time, OutKast, and two of their albums in particular, AT-Aliens and, of course, Aquemini. Also, the Real Lamar Star shouted these two out as well, so I wanted to make sure to mention that. But the main thing is OutKast, AT-Aliens, an amazing cover, great album with Two Dope Boys in a Cadillac, of course, the title track and Elevators, Me and You. But Aquemini, I think, is one of the top 3 rap albums of all time. Absolute phenomenal project, top to bottom, front to back, side to side. And the Aquemini cover is pretty remarkable too, and it just shows the dichotomy of Andre 3000 and Big Boy and how powerful that was. So just a lot going on, and I thought it was pretty impressive that everybody wanted to make sure that they pointed out the albums that they loved and the covers that they loved that were illustrated or art, as opposed to just a straight up picture. And that's why I wanted to do a part 2 here on Unique Access. So as I always do, there's more that I'll be mentioning if I do a part 3, but definitely of these albums, which one is your favorite in part 2 and why? But then also, if you haven't watched the part 1, go back and watch that. And then, of course, always follow me on all social media at Soren Baker. And if you haven't, lastly, please, please, please subscribe to the channel, like our content, share it. You know, we're trying to get these subscribers up, these views up. And one of the main ways we can do that is by word of mouth. And everyone's support really makes a big difference to us there. And lastly, if you're a big fan of Unique Access and love what we do here, you can support us. There's 3 different tiers by becoming a member. 3 different ways you could support us, and that really helps me give a little bit extra money to the people that help me with Unique Access and keep the team going and growing. So until next time, I'm Soren Baker. You can catch me on the 1st and 15th.